And away we go. Alright then, let's just see what goes on. Officials report outbreak of deadly Nipah virus which has no cure. Deadly Nipah virus spelled Nipah. So that's well, in a few years, someone's going to take this out of context, so I might as well put it out there before it gets to that point. The Nipah virus, carried by fruit bats and capable of infecting pigs and humans, is a serious zoonotic virus with no known treatment or vaccine. Nipah virus has a high mortality rate, estimated between 40 to 75% of cases resulting in death according to World Health Organization. Outbreaks of Nipah virus has been reported in Malaysia, Bangladesh, India, and the Philippines, though the range of fruit bats spreading it is wider. That's serious. And the fact there is no cure for this virus is very unfortunate. Whilst there hasn't been said if people have lost their lives specifically, however, for those who have lost their lives to the Nipah virus, rest in peace to those people. And I send my condolences to the friends and family of those people who've lost their lives to the Nipah virus. Someday, there will come a point. Not now, not this year, not even the year following after that, and so on and so forth. At some point, there will be a cure for this deadly, concerning, and deadly virus. There will come a point that something will be created to combat the serious illnesses that are roaming about on our planet. Perth Plaza evacuated after man throws device into crowd. A 31-year-old man was arrested after allegedly throwing a device believed to contain explosives into a crowd in Perth, Australia. Though the device did not detonate and caused no injuries, Western Australia Police Commissioner Cole Blanche said the device contained ball bearings, screws, and an unknown liquid, but there was no ongoing threat to the community. The incident happened less than 2 months after an attack targeting a Jewish festival in Sydney's Bondi Beach that left 15 people unalived. So in regards to what happened in Perth, glad to hear that no one has been harmed. So that's the start. And in regards to the man in question, why? I'm more puzzled than outraged. Of course, something like that towards civilians in public spaces is a massive no-no. No one should be causing any harm to other people. Yeah, what is the reason for this? Why would people think it's a good idea to throw something that may contain explosives in the middle of a public space? What's the aim of this? The thing with Bondi Beach, the aim was to unalive Jewish people. That motive is inevitably clear. With the Perth Plaza, it's just willy-nilly. You're just throwing explosives in a space with many people, all in the same place. Not too crowded like sardines, but there are people there are people there. I don't know what to say to this, other than the fact that no one should ever lose their lives for any reason, and I certainly don't want to see people being killed from any attempts of homicides, genocides, a third thing side, whatever scale of mass unaliving that exists in this world. No, that will not stand. It may continue, but it has to stop. No one should be fearing for their lives in public spaces, wherever they are in the world. Rental market swings back in tenants' favor with lower prices and move-in incentives. Across Canada, average asking rents fell 3.1% overall in 2025. December 2025 marked the 15th consecutive month decline, and the national average was 2,060 Canadian dollars last month, down 2.3% from a year earlier. A wave of new construction and policy shifts have added about 180,000 rental units under construction, while a trade dispute and federal government immigration cap limited demand and kept many first-time buyers renting. Landlords across Canada are increasingly offering incentives such as up to 3 months free rent and a 500 Canadian dollar move-in bonus, while vacancy for purpose-built rental apartments rose to 3.1%, and two-bedroom turnover rents declined last year, according to CMHC data. Tom Story of Royal LePage Signature Realty noted, "What was clear to me is that the need for real estate hasn't changed, but in 2025, how people chose to access it was a lot more on the leasing side than the purchase side, as rents surged and buyers hesitated." Well, Matthew Laberge said the math works better for rentals than for large ownership projects right now. Despite recent falls, 2025 produced record rental housing starts, and more apartment completions are expected this year, while asking rents remain around 14% above pre-pandemic December 2019, and analysts warn demand must rise to absorb new listings. Okay, so rent 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 is on the decline. That's pretty good actually. So I don't know what else to say for this. If prices are down and people in Canada are able to afford homes, then fair enough. There's nothing else to talk about here. But although I would say, I think what people would say is that Canada has so much land that could be utilized for anything: farming, wildlife reserves, new homes and businesses. All of this land that Canada has. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not sure if there was a point where no new homes were built in the last few years, and if there were, how many of those new homes were built? It could argue that Canada doesn't have a big population, which could be the reason why no new homes were even built in the first place. However, with the rates of immigration that's coming into Canada, surely that'd be enough for landowners to develop new properties for those migrants that are coming in. Although, in this day and age, it may not be the best time to discuss new homes for foreigners coming into countries, because, well, people are saying that the foreigners that do coming into countries, they are not respecting local laws or rules, which something that should have been second nature to a lot of people already, regardless of nationality or ethnicity, origins, and so on. Otherwise, at least there's something good coming out of Canada, even if there are people that have questions or are skeptical about the current Canadian government. It's a start. It's not much, but it's a start. That I will give it that. Today in Austria, a roundup of the latest news on Thursday. The SPD's Germany basket is intended to provide relief to consumers. Austria, on the other hand, is lowering the VAT on basic foodstuffs, a more effective solution, according to experts. Apples from Lake Constance, potatoes from Lower Saxony, flour from Hamburg, milk from Bavaria. These are the kinds of staple foods that should be included in the Germany basket. The initiative proposed by the SPD, Social Democrat Party, aims to provide financial relief to consumers while shopping and to support regional food producers and farmers. Supermarket chains could, on a voluntary basis, offer a basket of affordable and priced staple foods produced in Germany from all key categories, according to the party's proposal. But would this truly benefit consumers, especially those with low incomes? Austria plans to reduce the value-added tax on staple foods starting in July, but experts say consumers would benefit significantly more from this. Dirk Weiser, first parliamentary secretary of the SPD parliamentary group, said on Wednesday regarding the Germany basket, "The Green Week is starting, and it's right to open the discussion now in light of the significant rise in food prices. That's why his party proposed the Germany basket. Based on this, they want to examine where in the value chain the money is actually being made. If there are hidden price increases and deceptive packaging, they will take stronger action against them so that consumers finally get some relief." Okay. Yeah, especially now, of course, I was going to say something about supporting the farmers, which should already be the case already. But of course, much as business should continue to thrive, and small businesses continue to do their stuff pay and pay a suitable wage for all the workers, it's also important that people are able to afford staple foods like apples, pears, bell peppers, bananas, the berries that exist in the world. Nonetheless, if people do want to reduce the prices of foods, the question must be asked, what will make up for the amount of money that won't be made to small businesses because the prices of the staple foods have been reduced? Like, there will be a difference, although maybe small at start. Eventually, as the months go by, you will see a major difference between foods that's been sold at the market value rate and foods that have been purchased at a discounted rate, and how much of the profits and revenue do these small businesses make given the price differences. I'm all for affordability of foods and services. It is also important to understand, is there enough supply for the demand that is available in those local communities? So now it's not so clear if this is going ahead. If it is to go ahead, fair enough. However, it is worth noting, if there is going to be a price difference, there is going to be discounted rates for staple foods. Will there be enough of a profit margin for both the small businesses and the food producers to continue with the business that they're doing as usual and still have whatever money they made left over to improve on the equipment that are used to enhance the quality of those said products? If the answer is yes, then there's fair enough. There's nothing else to discuss. But if the answer is no, yeah, I think it's worth looking back on that. Again, all for affordability, yet there is a limit on how much of a discount rate that would be applied to staple foods, where people still can manage to afford staple foods, yet whatever money small businesses and food producers are still making enough to use the money they have left over, or the money they have made, to continue with the business that they're doing, and then allocate the money they've made towards the expenses of the equipments that are used to continue operating their business. Rapper Ye apologizes for past antisemitic statements, attributes behavior to mental health challenges. On Monday, Ye placed a full-page Wall Street Journal ad apologizing for past anti-Semitism and attributing his outburst to maniac episodes linked to bipolar disorder, writing, "I am not a Nazi or anti-Semite." medical medical records show the injury wasn't properly diagnosed until 2023. He says a car accident broke his jaw and caused right frontal lobe damage. Last year, Ye says he experienced a 4-month maniac episode marked by psychotic and impulsive behavior, during which he posted antisemitic hate, sold swastika t-shirts, released the song Hail Hitler, and faced a former marketing employee lawsuit. After hitting rock bottom a few months ago, his wife urged him to seek help, and Ye says he has started medication, therapy, exercise, and clean living while focusing on music, clothing, and design. Acknowledging harm, Ye, formerly Kanye West, says he is not asking for sympathy or a free pass, while aspiring to earn forgiveness and recognizing his impact on the black community, loved ones and former associates, and readers and followers influenced by his public statements. Now, I'm not going to say this is all a lie, it's all fabricated, or this is just some kind of stunt. No, I'm not going to say any of that. I will say, to say that a damage to his right frontal lobe being the reason why he has gone down a path where he has said anti-Semitic stuff, statements, and released the song literally titled Hail Hitler, it's a rather convenient reason. Again, I'm not saying it's intentional to say that is the case, that his frontal lobe damage is what caused him to say the things he has said, which is what he is apologizing for now. If at any point he was going to go back to these statements, I'm not sure you can use the front lobal damage card again. And again, I'm not saying that this is all a setup or all performative. There will be people online saying that, oh, it's those people. They're the ones who's just trying to silence him. That could be the case. It's not. It's not true. I'm saying it could be the case. If anyone has any skepticism about Ye, what he said, the things he's done, everyone is welcome to such speculations, asking questions, so long as it does not result to violence. Not that it would ever go to violence, yet it is important that whatever goes on in this world, and as cautiously as you can, not that anyone's going to go after you, it is worth phrasing these questions carefully. How could this be the case? Could could he have still said all of these things if he didn't have gone through some kind of damage physically? It's about looking at the what ifs of situations. And if things in the case that things still could have gone on the way they went, if particular elements like damage to the frontal lobe, the car accidents, whatever or whatever recreational drugs he was on at the time, the absence of any of that stuff, he would still said what he has said about Jewish people and the anti-Semitic remarks. There are people that are skeptical about particular groups of people, yet they are careful with their words. Not that there will be people going after these people, or there's a risk of being unalive for making such comments about such groups of people. There's going to be many members of the public that may not fully understand what these people are saying. And if they do know what these people are saying, then there is a likely case that people are going to be very upset. Not just offended, but they're going to be very upset. How could you say this? Why would you say that? Do you think these people are the reason why a lot of the world's problems are happening? That is not to say that's the case, nor is it ever true. If you're going to question anything in regards to the story, or question anything in this world, be careful with how you phrase the question. Not for the sake of, not just for your own safety, or to prevent you, or or even to reduce the risk of anyone being suspicious about you, or any other threat that could threaten your life. There are more effective ways of discussing topics in today's world without having to raise attention to higher ups, elites, and as well as provide a universal understanding about what goes on in our world today. So anyway, back to the story about Ye apologizing for past anti-Semitic statements. What's important is, if people have said something that offends people, and they are genuinely sorry, and if they're genuinely sorry about what they've said or done, then fair enough. But what really makes it a lot more meaningful if they look back on those comments and those actions and realize, good grief, what was I thinking? Why would I say any of that stuff? If that is the case, then you know people are sorry for what they've done. But if people aren't looking back, questioning why they've said the stuff they have said, which they have apologized for previously, then they're not sorry. People are sorry for what they have said or done if they look back on what they have done and question to themselves, why did I say that? Why have I done this? What on earth was I thinking? That's how you know people are sorry and they do regret their actions and the things they have said. I'll leave it there. Heading football likely to have contributed to death of former Man United star. Corona finds. On Monday, Corona John Heath delivered a narrative conclusion that Gordon McQueen passed away from pneumonia as a consequence of mixed vascular dementia and CTE, saying it is likely that repetitive head impacts sustained by heading the ball while playing soccer football contributed to the CTE. Gordon McQueen's playing record shows almost 350 appearances as a centre-back for St Mirren, Leeds United and Manchester United between 1970 and 1985, with 30 caps for Scotland for the Scotland national team. Professor Willie Stewart found CTE and vascular dementia in Gordon McQueen's brain, with torn membranes. A consultant agreed on a causal link, and family said he scored from set pieces and had concussions. Appearing at a hearing earlier this month, Hayley McQueen, TV presenter and daughter of Gordon McQueen, recalled her father's headaches after training and personality changes after his 60th birthday. After retiring as a player, McQueen managed Airdrie, coached at St Mirren's and Middlesbrough, and worked as a Sky Sports pundit. Professor Willie Stewart said CTE symptoms are typically in long professional careers. Well, firstly, I will say, rest in peace to Gordon McQueen. I send my condolences to his friends and family. And when people play soccer football at any point in their careers, it is important how you're handling the ball with your head. Because if your head get bumped on or bashed on more than enough times, there will come a point in the long term there will be noticeable symptoms that will eventually lead to vascular dementia and CTE and other possible conditions relating to one's mental state. So it is important that whatever career you're pursuing, it is very important that you are careful with how you're handling your head and whatever comes to contact with your head. Because although it may not hurt so much at first, prolonged contact with your head and other objects will eventually lead to such conditions like vascular dementia and CT. And there is regulations put in place not regulations, but there is a limit put in place for youth players in soccer football that you're not allowed to make more than, not sure what the exact number is, but for example, you're not allowed to make more than 10 headers in one training session or in one professional or youth game. Any more than that, then experts would say that could be a likely chance of being catched with conditions that would lead to long-term damage to your brain. So there are limits in place to prevent any future or current soccer football players from going through what Gordon McQueen has gone through, and other retired players long before that, knowing that contacts with your head and the ball could lead to such conditions that will have a toll on one's mental capacity. So it is important, whatever career you're pursuing, take care of your head. And if your head does come into contact with any objects, I think it is worth, in my opinion, listening to a couple of audiobooks just to get understanding of the world, particular subjects, and maybe play some mobile games that people say helps with your brain. Not just any mobile games, like, I'm not sure. I have so many ideas about what kind of games people that are elderly would play that helps with brain functions and stimulating your brain. Such games like that is also useful for anyone that may have conditions that take a toll on one's brain. Toronto Transit facing major disruptions following massive snowfall. A record-setting winter storm in Toronto shut down subway service and delayed dozens of flights on Monday morning as some areas were pummeled with nearly 60 centimeters of snow on Sunday. Here's a look at how transit agencies, airports, and roads were affected by the conditions. TTC, after services were suspended on most of the west side of Line 2 this morning, the TTC says trains are now running east from Islington Station. Speaking to CP24, TTC spokesperson Susan Guyen said its recovery effort is in full swing, but warned that there are still major gaps in service due to the storm and the snow on the track in open areas of the system. Service remains suspended between Kipling and Islington stations, as well as between Woodbine and Kennedy stations on Line 2. There's still no service between Eglinton and Bloor Young stations, or St. Clair West and Shepherd West stations on Line 1. The entirety of the Finch West LRT is also closed. We do have shuttle bus running on those lines to keep customers moving. We're working hand in hand with the city to dig ourselves out of the snow this morning. On the surface, we're trying to provide as much service as possible, as best. So, and this is just somewhere in Toronto, I assume, given TTC might mean Toronto Transit something, or Toronto something something. But it's not just Canada, or Toronto for that matter. Everywhere in North America, many states in the US are also going to be hit with this snowstorm. And a lot of places, it's the conditions are so severe that there are businesses had to make an announcement online saying we're closed for the day because the conditions are not that safe for us to commute. That's how bad the snowstorm is. If it actually gets businesses to close down for the day or the next few days if the snowstorm even continues. And I did say a couple episodes ago that as of this recording, my mom is visiting a friend of hers in North Carolina, which it too is also impacted by the snowstorm, at least more so in the west of North Carolina. But even the east is also getting very cold temperatures as well. I know she will come back. It's just it'll be a few days later than what she originally planned because, well, she didn't know the snowstorm's gonna happen in the US, and neither did any other people in America or Canada. Well, wherever people are around the world, North America, South America, the Africa, the Asia, or even the Europe, stay safe and stay warm because those storms are quite the chilly breeze. They silly are. Israel says remains of last hostage recovered in Gaza, paving way for next ceasefire phase. The Israeli military said on Monday the remains of Kvili, 24, the last Israeli hostage held in Gaza since October 7th, 2023, have been identified and will be returned for burial. Under the ceasefire's first phase, the return of all living and deceased hostages were required for Phase 2, and Kvili's family urged Israel to wait until his remains were recovered, while ceasefire mediators, including Washington, pressed both sides to proceed. On Sunday, Israeli forces carried out a large-scale operation searching cemetery areas in northern Gaza and along the Yellow Line, where Gvili's remains were found on the Israeli side near Al-Batsh Cemetery and Al-Sanafur. The recovery paves the way for the next phase of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement, and Netanyahu called it, "This is an extraordinary achievement for the state of Israel. Rafah crossing will reopen for pedestrians only after conditions are met. Phase 2 will confront near issues, including disarming Hamas and governance changes, while Palestinians in Gaza doubt improvements amid ongoing bloodshed and more than 71,400 deaths since 2023. It's been a while that there's been anything about Gaza or Palestinians. Over 71,000 deaths since 2023. It's very unfortunate. For the for the least part, for sure. It's very unfortunate that so many Palestinians have lost their family members, even close friends, since October 7th. And even if people will argue, for sure, that this, there are Palestinians that are alive today, they voted in the government, that is Hamas, that has been at least somewhat responsible for the violence within the Gaza Strip. No one should have lost their lives since October 7th. No one on any side should ever lose their life whatsoever. And whilst there is progress with the ceasefire plans and the next ceasefire phase, I'm not going to jump to conclusions so swiftly, nor will I jump up and down and say, "Hooray, the ceasefire is continuing." We don't know. Not just the fact we're just because we're not within Gaza, where we could experience what's going on with the operations and the phases of the ceasefire, and even if both Hamas and the IDF of Israel are doing the best they can to cooperate with the ceasefire deals and phases, who's not to say someone from either side could start a fuss and ignite violence again, and more lives could lose beyond the 71 or more thousand that have already passed away since October 7th. I am glad that there is progress in a ceasefire within the Gaza Strip. Yet we can't celebrate yet until whatever the ceasefire is entailing has been completed, all the necessary phases that are set out. Hopefully, whatever the next phase is for the ceasefire plans, it proceeds swimmingly, smoothly, and without any fuss. I don't want to see anyone starting up a fuss. I know people that have opinions on either side. They have opinions about what Hamas are doing. I know people have strong opinions about what the IDF are doing. And as valid those concerns are, we cannot jump to conclusions just yet. We have to wait and see what happens in the next phases of the ceasefire deal. And even when the ceasefire phases have been completed, again, who's not to say that this, whatever problems we had back in October 7th, 2023, may not pick up again. You can never be too careful. European Union opens investigation into Musk's AI chatbot Grok over sexual deepfakes. The European Commission has initiated an investigation into Elon Musk's Twitter X regarding the AI tool Grok, which allegedly created sexualized images of real individuals. The investigation may result in the EU regulator imposing interim measures if Twitter X fails to make necessary adjustments. The focus will be on whether Twitter X respects the rights of European citizens, especially women and children, as required by the Digital Services Act. The European Commission is assessing if Twitter X complies with digital regulations to prevent the spread of illegal content, like manipulated sexually explicit images. I will give the European Commission, I am with the European Commission on this. Despite my opinions about the EU and its other standards and regulations, when it comes to images that are sexually explicit, fair enough. I just don't get why people want to generate images of someone in the nude. Why? And for someone to make those images made public, if they post it publicly to everyone, where's the shame, man? I've said this a while ago, at the time when Grok introduced their image editing feature, and I said, where's the shame in generating these explicit images of people in the nude? It's just gross. Not even that's enough to say to describe the situation with image editing from Grok. Of course, there will be people that use image editing for good intentions, but that does not excuse the story in question about people using the Grok image editing to create images that are just not all that appropriate, and certainly not suitable for work. Yeah, no, no. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I think people know too much about the harms and the risks of artificial intelligence. At this point, it doesn't even matter if AI can get the job done efficiently more than humans, or if artificial intelligence can do your homework in a fraction of a minute. People are not talking about the net downsides all that often, nor enough. There will be a moment in time, eventually, it's over. It's done and dusted. If people can't be trusted, if people can't be trusted with artificial intelligence, then what's the point of having artificial intelligence at all? Let's just go back to using Google and search queries about how do I open a can of mayonnaise? Or how do I stroke a dog? Better yet, stroke a cat without being scathed or scratched. At least mostly scratched. I'm not sure how scathed would fit in this. But there's some strange people in this world that just ask for the most unusual stuff. And sometimes disturbing and weird. And disgusting as well. I guess we'll never, for a long while, Until we find the answer, it's not looking good for anyone. I'll say it like that. Prime Minister defends Burnham block, saying it will allow focus on elections we must win, quote unquote. On Monday, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer defended the Labour National Executive Committee's decision to block Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, saying Burnham is doing a great job. Okay, I'll agree with that. But running would divert our resources from May elections. On Sunday, a 10-strong group from Labour's NEC voted against Mr. Burnham, with the NEC recording an 8-1 vote, and Shabana Mahmood abstaining after Andrew Gwynn agreed to stand down, citing costs and electoral risk. The NEC argued the mayoral by-election and potential loss of the Greater Manchester mayoralty justified denying Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, permission to run. On Monday, Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, said he was disappointed and would return with full force, with full focus, to his mayoral job. Well, Labour backbenchers urged the NEC to reverse its ruling. Starmer framed the contest as Labour versus Reform and argued Labour must concentrate resources on the run-up to May's local and devolved elections, saying, "We need all of our focus on those elections." I did say about Andy Burnham a couple of episodes ago that whilst a lot of people are not going to agree with what Labour's doing with the UK, the current UK government, Andy Burnham is, for the most part, doing quite decently. It's not spectacular, it's not a miracle or the greatest thing in the world, but at least doing something for Greater Manchester, especially with construction, because, well, we need homes in Manchester. There's so many people, and there's support for local businesses. And if anyone wants to argue with any of those stuff, then go ahead. I'm all open to such points that go against such. However, from my perspective, and as someone that does live within Greater Manchester, it's not too bad actually. Even if there aren't many good things that are being contributed, at least it is worth having some progress on something within any given area than nothing at all. It's better to have something done than to do nothing at all. Then again, Manchester has been doing that for who knows how many decades, especially ever since the Industrial Revolution, when factories got shut down in the early 20th century. Urban developers were trying to look at how do we rebuild Manchester after the factories have been shut down and revitalize the space that had been empty into pockets of local communities with businesses and homes, which that are somewhat affordable. So, and not, and given that Starmer has blocked Andy Burnham from running in the Gorton and Denton by-election, if Labour NEC did allow Burnham to run in the by-election, and then Burnham himself runs in the leadership to become the next Labour leader. Now, this is not going to prevent Reform from winning lots of seats at the next nationwide general election, yet it will soften the loss that Labour is in right now. Simply, Andy Burnham is the saving grace for Labour, just like how Robert Jenrick could have been the saving grace for the Tories until he defected to Reform. So now the closest leader to taking over the Tories after Badenoch is James Cleverly. Yeah. But if Labour does stand by its decision to not allow Burnham to run in the Gorton and Denton by-election, Labour is just going to continue falling, like it's currently in right now. And in the next local elections, Reform will continue its massive trajectory win to take over multiple local councils. And I know people who do not like reform in the slightest. And fair enough, I'm not going to argue with that. There are flaws. There are a couple flaws to reform, as there are upsides to what people believe reform could do if they were to get into governments, either at the local level or nationally. Yeah, not every party's perfect, but of course, not all parties or all flaws either. What's important is whatever party people believe will do best for their local communities and for the nation as a whole, they vote for that party in hopes that they get to local or national governments. Because in the last UK general election, people were voting for whichever party will just lessen the Tories' number of seats. Simply, they're just voting to get the Tories out. Although they achieved getting the Tories out, but at what cost? And even if people at the time were very happy that Labour got a massive majority, the people that voted Labour are not happy with what Labour are doing. So now, most of Labour voters are now switching to the Greens because they align more with the values of the Labour 2024. So it is important. If you're going to do something once you get into government, you commit to it to the best of your ability. It doesn't have to happen instantly or immediately. At least show that you are willing to commit to what you have pledged to do if you get into government. Not just ignore the problem, or at worst, do the opposite of what you were committing to do. That's even worse. It is much worse to do the opposite of what you promised than to not do it at all. Although it is important to do something than to do nothing at all. When you do something, it is important. You are committed to your promises to the best of your ability, no matter how impossible that promise in question might be. And that is it for this episode.